Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of UFOs and government secrecy. You guys sent us some really interesting stuff on Bob Lazar and Project Gravitator, so let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, we've got some excerpts here from a recent interview with Luigi Vitelli. He is the man behind Project Gravitator.
Okay.
And it's a truly ambitious project, really aiming to recreate Bob Lazar's experiences at the infamous S4 facility.
Right.
Talking VR documentaries, even a physical model of the alien spacecraft that Lazar claims to have worked on.
Okay, so for anyone out there who might not be familiar, let's start with the basics. Who exactly is Bob Lazar, and why is his story such a big deal in the UFO community?
So Bob Lazar is a physicist who, back in 1989, made some shocking claims about working at a top-secret location called S4, supposedly near Area 51.
Okay.
And he alleged that he was part of a team that was reverse engineering alien technology from recovered spacecraft.
Wow.
So his testimony has been incredibly controversial.
Right.
Really captivating UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike for decades.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. So what were some of the specific things Lazar said that made his story so explosive?
Lazar went into great detail about 9 different disc-shaped crafts that were supposedly housed in hangars at S4. He claimed that these vehicles used a propulsion system based on element 115.
Oh, wow.
An element not found naturally on Earth.
Right.
According to Lazar, when you bombard element 115 with protons, it creates a gravity wave, allowing the craft to manipulate space-time and achieve incredible speeds of maneuverability.
Whoa, now that's what I call advanced tech. And this Project Gravitator, they're trying to bring these claims to life, right?
Exactly. What I find so fascinating about Project Gravitator is that they're not trying to definitively prove or disprove Lazar's story. Instead, they're focused on recreating his experience. At S4, using only his recollections as a guide, they've employed cutting-edge 3D modeling VR technology and exhaustive research to build a virtual replica of S4, the sport model spacecraft, and the surrounding environment.
So they're basically building an experience where you can step into Lazar's shoes and see the world through his eyes. That's pretty incredible.
You got it. And the level of detail that they've achieved is remarkable.
Wow.
They've gone to incredible lengths to ensure accuracy, even down to the type of sand and vegetation found at Papoose Lake back in the late 1980s.
Wow.
Vitelli even said that the process of recreating S4 in such detail convinced some of his own team members who were initially skeptical about Lazar's story.
Now that's what I call commitment to a project. So tell me, what are some of the most incredible details they uncovered in this process?
One thing that really struck me was how Lazar had to physically demonstrate things for the team.
Oh, wow.
Because he didn't have exact measurements from his time at S4.
Right.
So to show them how narrow the entrance to the craft was, he actually used his own body as a reference point. At one point, he even used his patio door. It's these tangible physical actions that add a layer of authenticity to his claims.
It's like they're navigating his memories in real time.
Yeah.
What other intriguing details stood out to you?
Well, there's this story about the team discovering that their office space just happened to be the exact same size as the sport model.
What?
They only realized this after meticulously recreating the craft's dimensions. It was a total coincidence, but it definitely adds to the mystique of the project.
Wow.
These kinds of synchronicities make you wonder.
You know, that detail about the office space really makes me think about the nature of this whole project.
Well,
what were they hoping to find? I mean, if it's not about proving or disproving Lazar, what's the point of this meticulous recreation?
That's a great question, and one that I think goes to the heart of what Project Gravitator is trying to achieve. It's not about finding definitive answers, but rather about creating an experience that allows you to engage with Lazar's story in a new way. By immersing yourself in the details, you can start to grapple with the same questions that have fascinated people for decades.
Okay, so let's step inside the craft for a moment. What did Lazar say it was like inside? What kind of details did they uncover there?
One of the most surprising details was how incredibly dark it was inside the craft.
Really?
Lazar described the interior as almost light-absorbing.
Interesting.
Despite the presence of 2 large industrial spotlights used by the human workers, when the team recreated this lighting setup in their 3D model, they had to artificially increase the light intensity several times over to even see the interior.
Right, even with powerful lights, it was still incredibly dark. That's bizarre. Did Lazar have any explanation for that?
He didn't really have an explanation. He simply stated that it was extremely dark, almost as if the material of the craft itself was absorbing the light. This detail, along with the fact that they found evidence of ordinary extension cords being used to power the human equipment, creates this strange juxtaposition between advanced alien technology and improvised human solutions.
Yeah.
It's almost comical to imagine.
It really paints a picture of humans trying to wrap their heads around technology they barely understand, running to Home Depot to grab extension cords for their alien spacecraft.
Right.
It reminds me of something else. You mentioned the reversed American flag on the craft. What's the story there?
Yes, the flag. That's a detail that initially fueled a lot of skepticism.
Right.
Lazar said there was a small American flag sticker placed on the exterior of the craft, but it was reversed. Critics argued that the placement and orientation didn't make sense.
But Project Gravitator looked into this as well, right? Did they find anything to support Lazar's claim?
They did. They painstakingly reconstructed Lazar's position and line of sight as he entered the hangar, and they confirmed that he would have been able to see the flag from his vantage point.
Oh, wow.
What's even more interesting is that their research revealed that a reversed American flag is actually standard protocol on the right side of uniforms, vehicles, and aircraft.
Interesting.
It's done to create the correct visual orientation when the flag is flowing in the wind.
So what seemed like a strange detail actually aligns with real-world practices. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's amazing how this kind of deep dive can debunk seemingly far-fetched claims. But there's more to Bob Lazar than just the technology, right? What did we learn about him as a person?
Vitelli really emphasized that throughout this project, he got to know Bob Lazar not just as the UFO guy,
right,
but as a human being. He describes Lazar as a humble, down-to-earth person with passions for speed, explosives, and animals.
Hold on, explosives. That's quite a combination of interests.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, it turns out Lazar is really into building and racing jet cars.
Okay.
He also organized these events called desert blasts,
okay,
where people would gather in the Nevada desert to, well, detonate explosives.
Wow.
And on top of all that, he's apparently a huge animal lover.
That's quite a contrast to the image of a secretive scientist working on alien technology. Did Vitelli share any specific stories about Lazar's love for animals?
He did. Apparently, Lazar's home is filled with dogs, cats, horses, and even a dedicated area for feeding birds. Vitelli described it as a haven for animals. It really humanizes Lazar and shows a side of him that we don't often see in the media.
So it's less about a cold, calculating scientist and more about a guy with a love for speed, a fascination with things that go boom, and a soft spot for furry friends. It's fascinating to get these glimpses into his life outside of the UFO narrative. Did Vitelli mention if Lazar ever expressed any regrets about coming forward with this story?
While Lazar didn't explicitly say he regretted it, he did acknowledge the immense pressure and scrutiny he's faced over the years. He maintains that he would rather people doubt his story than put other lives at risk by revealing information that he believes could jeopardize national security.
That's a heavy burden to carry, the weight of a story that could change the world but also carries potential consequences. It's a lot to process. You know, this deep dive has made me wonder, if Lazar is telling the truth, what are the implications? What does it mean for humanity if we're not alone and this advanced technology exists?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what makes this entire story so compelling. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what makes this entire story so compelling. It's fascinating how Project Gravitator, while meticulously recreating Lazar's experience, doesn't aim to definitively prove or disprove his claims.
Right, it's not about handing you the answer on a silver platter. Instead, you're invited to step into this meticulously crafted world and grapple with the same questions that have fascinated and divided people for decades.
And that, I think, is one of the most valuable takeaways from this deep dive. It encourages us to engage with complex and controversial topics with a critical yet open mind.
Okay, so we've talked about Lazar's claims and how Project Gravitator has gone to incredible lengths to bring them to life. But now I'm really curious, what are the implications if all of this is true? What does it mean for us if Lazar's story is accurate?
That's the big question, isn't it? If we accept, for a moment, that Lazar's account is accurate, it suggests that a covert government program has been operating for decades, possibly possessing technology that's far beyond our current understanding. The potential ramifications for science, technology, national security, and even our place in the cosmos are pretty staggering.
It's mind-blowing to even consider. It suggests a level of secrecy and technological advancement that would completely rewrite our understanding of human history.
Exactly. Just imagine the possibilities if we could harness the power of element 1 of 15 and unlock the secrets of gravity manipulation. It could revolutionize space travel, energy production, medicine, countless fields.
It's both exhilarating and a little terrifying to think about. On one hand, it's this incredible leap forward for humanity, but on the other hand, it raises some serious concerns about the potential misuse of such advanced technology. I mean, who controls it, and what are their intentions?
You're hitting on some crucial points there. If this technology exists, the question of who controls it and how they're using it is paramount.
Yeah.
And, makes you wonder if maybe that's part of the reason why such information, if it's real, has been kept under wraps for so long. It could completely disrupt our societal structures, our belief systems, global power dynamics, everything.
It's like opening Pandora's box. Once that knowledge is out there, you can't put it back in. But let's shift gears a little bit. You mentioned earlier that there's a lot of skepticism surrounding Lazar's claims. What are some of the main arguments that people bring up?
Well, it's understandable that people would be skeptical. Some critics point to inconsistencies in Lazar's educational background and employment history. Others question the lack of physical evidence to support his allegations.
But didn't Project Gravitator address some of those inconsistencies, like that whole thing with the reversed American flag?
They did to a certain extent. They were able to verify some details like the flag placement and the fact that Lazar would have been able to see other crafts in adjacent hangars based on his descriptions. But other questions, like the discrepancies in his educational records, remain open.
And what about the lack of physical evidence? That seems like a pretty big hurdle to overcome.
It is. Lazar claims that most of the documentation and evidence from his time at S4 has been erased or classified. And while this explanation is convenient, it's also incredibly difficult to verify.
So we're left with this story that's both incredibly compelling and incredibly elusive. It's supported by detailed accounts and circumstantial evidence, but that concrete physical proof is still missing.
Exactly, and that ambiguity is precisely what makes the Bob Lazar story so captivating. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the possibility of hidden truths, and the inherent challenges of grappling with extraordinary claims.
It's like trying to solve a giant puzzle with only a handful of pieces. We have fragments of information, tantalizing clues, but the complete picture remains just out of reach.
And perhaps that's the point. Maybe the real value of stories like Lazar's isn't about definitively proving or disproving their validity, but rather about the questions they raise, the discussions they spark, and the way they expand our collective imagination.
It challenges us to think critically, to entertain possibilities outside of our current understanding, and to approach the unknown with healthy skepticism, but also a willingness to consider the extraordinary. It's a delicate balance.
Absolutely. And in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information and competing narratives, the ability to sift through it all, to evaluate evidence objectively, and to engage in meaningful discussions about complex issues has never been more important.
You're right. It's about learning to navigate the gray areas, not just looking for black and white answers. It reminds us that sometimes the journey of exploration is just as important as the destination, especially when we're dealing with the unknown.
Well said. And as we delve deeper into this UFO phenomenon, stories like Bob Lazar's serve as powerful reminders to stay curious, to question assumptions, and to embrace the spirit of inquiry.
So let's dive into this idea of inquiry a bit further. When we come back, I want to talk about Project Gravitator's approach to recreating Lazar's experience. They deliberately chose not to use AI, opting instead for a completely human-driven process. Why do you think they made that decision? Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were talking about Project Gravitator's decision to avoid using AI in their recreation of Bob Lazar's experience at S4. They went with a completely human-driven approach. Every detail meticulously crafted by hand. It's a fascinating choice.
It is, and I think it speaks volumes about their commitment to authenticity and transparency. By relying solely on human talent and expertise, they eliminate any potential concerns about AI manipulation or bias. Every element of the project, from those detailed landscapes to the intricacies of the sport model, can be directly traced back to Lazar's original testimony.
It's like they're saying, we're not going to let a computer interpret this story. We're going to put it in the hands of skilled artists and researchers who can bring Lazar's memories to life in the most human way possible.
Exactly. And remember, they even went so far as to physically recreate the reactor from the sport model based on Lazar's descriptions.
Wow.
They then had Lazar himself examine it and confirm its accuracy. It's a tangible object that connects us directly to his story.
Wow, that's incredible. A physical manifestation of this potentially alien technology, or at least a meticulously crafted replica based on first-hand accounts. It really bridges the gap between the abstract and the concrete.
It does, and through this blend of cutting-edge technology, painstaking research, and deep personal connection, Project Gravitator achieves something truly remarkable. It transports you to the heart of Bob Lazar's extraordinary experience. You're not just reading about it or watching it on a screen, you're stepping into his world.
It takes us beyond the realm of speculation and into a space where the lines between science fiction and reality become blurred. It makes you wonder, what if it's all true?
That's the question that lingers long after you've finished exploring Project Gravitator. It stays with you. And I think that's the true power of this project. It's not about providing definitive answers, but about igniting our curiosity, challenging our assumptions, and prompting us to ask bigger questions about ourselves, our place in the universe, and the very nature of reality.
This deep dive has certainly raised more questions than it's answered, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from embracing the unknown.
Absolutely. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. And projects like Project Gravitator remind us to stay curious, to keep exploring, and to never stop questioning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What stands out to you about Bob Lazar's story? Does the meticulous approach of Project Gravitator make you more or less inclined to believe his claims? And if you could step into that virtual S4 facility, what would you ask Bob Lazar? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.